We'll have some guest speakers, as you know. We got Scott here, Dave Ross from Superior, our Senator Shelia Harsdorf, candidate Dan Mielke. We're going to give them all some time to talk. First of all, I sure want to give credit where credit is due. I think I told some of you earlier that you know, we found out for sure that Obama did something real well. He got already collected $150,000 in back taxes that people would not have owed if they hadn't been nominated for his cabinet. Let's give a little bit of credit where it's due anyway. So without further ado, let's have Scott Walker come up.
It is good to be back, and back here in Polk County. In fact, this morning I did an interview with a radio station, and they asked me if I'd been to Polk County before, and I said I've been here many a times for Dick's invitation. I actually was here 2 years ago in this very room at this podium as the warm-up act for K-Talk at that time, but it is good to be back on my own as well, and whether it's coming in for political events like this, or last fall we did a good fundraiser for Kent, or coming down the way for Shelia and some of the others, or as I do in the summer. This summer I'll be back June 20th through the 25th, touring around the state on my Road King, Harley Davidson Road King, and stopping by along the way. We always enjoy coming through this part of the state, particularly in Polk County. I too want to say, before I share with you some comments though, it is always good. In fact, I still have, to show you back from when I think we were over a little bit further north of Highway 8, I still have my elephant, although I think one of my kids temporarily broke the nose off a couple years ago and I had to re-glue it. So it is fully intact with the flag on. But I know Dick does a great job with that. But it's good to be with all of you, but particularly with Shelia. Shelia and I used to serve together in the Assembly for a while, and she left us for a little bit, then came back to the Senate. My former Chief of Staff was one of the folks that helped run one of her first campaigns, so I feel in some small way I had something to do with Sheila's election, but Shelia has just done a spectacular job down in Madison, and not just for all of you, but when I think about the abuses this governor, which I'll tell you about a few others, but with the so-called Frankenstein veto did in the past, that could not have been changed by anybody else except your Senator Shelia Harsdorf, who led the charge here and across the state to get that done. That was one of the greatest abuses that this governor did, but any governor could have done. She corrected that through her courageous leadership and deserves a great debt of gratitude. And I thought I was just going to see him tomorrow night, but I get the added bonus of seeing Dave Ross tonight as well. He's a great mayor in Superior, a great reformer, one of the few municipal leaders in the state who actually understands how to balance good service and still protecting the taxpayers. And it's going to be a treat to hear him talk as well. But Dave earned the distinct honor, along with Craig, of being, for sure, I had people that came down to my victory party last year when I got, if you can believe it or not, in Milwaukee County, nearly 60% of the vote as a conservative. But we got people from all across the state that came to help us out. But by far, the two of you earned the award for the furthest distance, because nobody came further than Superior. So they helped us out when during victory night. And I'm glad to be back in Superior tomorrow night with a great leader. I have to bring you greetings as well from my wife Tonette and my sons Matt and Alex. Originally, the whole gang was going to come up with me here tonight, particularly my son Matthew, who's the same age as Brian, who's a big snowboarder. So he wasn't going to listen to me, he was going to go snowboarding. But one son had a basketball game, and the snowboarder Matthew decided, literally within the last 24 hours, that since Saturday night is this dance called Turnabout, where the girls invite the guys to the dances, and he got an invitation this week. Suddenly going with Dad's 5.5 hours up to go snowboarding was not quite as interesting as going with a girl to get a freshman to a dance. I'm going to give you a little bit of optimism about the future. A lot of times since November 4th, I've been at Republican functions, and somewhat I feel like there's a little bit of doom and gloom. But certainly, you know, we look at the mess with the president and his allies, of which one is unfortunately temporarily from this area, temporarily for as long as I've been alive, but temporarily Dave Obey and company. But certainly we look at what's happening in Washington, and we can, as not just as Republicans, but as Americans, feel some dismay for the future. Certainly we look at the challenges in our state's capital, particularly with the change of majority in the Assembly this last time, and that gives us some reason for pause, again, not just as Republicans, but as taxpayers, as residents of the state. But I want to leave you with a little bit of hope and optimism for the future. The week after the election, about that Wednesday, I guess it was, the week after the election, I was invited to a function down in Florida for the Republican Governors Association. Probably didn't hear a whole lot about it, although you may have saw one glimpse of it. And that was the first time that Sarah Palin gave a speech after the election. So that in itself was kind of interesting, because here were all these great governors, Bobby Jindal, you had Haley Barbour, you had Tim Ponte from across the way, Mitch Daniels, all these others. And they basically got knocked over by the press to get to Sarah Palin, who gave a great speech, outstanding speech. But what you didn't hear, and probably haven't heard since, was something I think is really remarkable and gives us a little acorn upon which to build our hope and optimism for 2010 and beyond. And that is the fact that every Republican governor, every single one across this great country that stood for re-election last fall, every Republican governor was re-elected. Every single one. It's even more remarkable when you think about some of the circumstances. In Indiana, a state obviously that neighbors Illinois, a state that went to Obama, the first time a Democrat's been elected top of the ticket in that state in 2 generations. That state had a Republican governor who started out with some pretty bad poll ratings because he was aggressively pursuing his agenda to privatize things like the tollway and other things. He moved forward on that, and in the end, because of his discipline in pushing not only fiscal restraint, but also innovation and reform, that governor, Mitch Daniels, was re-elected with 58% of the vote on a night when Obama carried Indiana. Even more impressive is in Vermont. Any of you follow the Congress in Vermont, you'll know that they literally elect a socialist, not just a guy with a D next to his name who acts like a socialist, but a guy who actually says he's a socialist when he's running. They elect that socialist elected to Congress, and they re-elected a Republican governor on November 4th. What that told me is if you're a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars, and you're willing to reform things, to move forward, to innovate things like Dave and I talk about on a daily basis, if you're willing to reform things, kind of like the guy we used to have here in Wisconsin called Tommy Thompson, if you're willing to do that, even at a time when Democrats, largely through the assistance of a presidential candidate who raised and spent more money than George W. Bush and John Kerry combined, even under those circumstances, Republicans can win. That gives me hope for the future. That gives me hope for not just 2 years from now, that gives me a hope for a year and 8 months from now. Because the next election is in 2 years. The next election is just a little bit more than a year and 8 months from today. So that's important to think about for the future. The other thing that was interesting about that trip is I went down there on Wednesday and Thursday. On Friday, I got invited to rent a car and go up about an hour away from this other meeting to a place that was a meeting called GOPAC. Now, some of you might have heard of GOPAC. Years ago, Pete DuPont started GOPAC. Newt Gingrich really put it on the map. After he left, they've had other great leaders like J.C. Watts, but the most recent one was a guy by the name of Michael Steele.